Let us start off the session by chanting Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahatu Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahatu Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahatu Samma Sambuddhassa. All right. Today we are discussing the Pacalā Sutta. This sutta is regarding nodding off, or rather the ways, the 8 ways that one could overcome drowsiness, right? Overcome drowsiness, and the nature of true discipleship with regards to, specifically with regards to sort of walk in the path of Dhamma in terms of meditating and awakening the effort, the virya, which is needed to walk on the path, right? So if you do turn to page number 70, we do turn to page number 70. The discourse on nodding off. Thus have I heard. At one time, the Blessed One was staying in the deer park in the Pacalā forest at Sumara Giri in the Bagga country. At the time, the Venerable Mahamoggallana was sitting and nodding off while trying to meditate in the village of Kallavala Mutta in Magadha. Through the divine eye, clairvoyance, purified and surpassing the human, the Blessed One saw the Venerable Moggallana sitting and nodding off in the village of Kallavala Mutta in Magadha. Then, just as a strong man would stretch his bent arm and would bend his stretch arm, which is to say that it was done so fast, the Blessed One disappeared from the deer park in Pacalā forest in Sumaragiri in Bagga country, and immediately appeared before the Venerable Mahamoggallana sitting and nodding in the village of Kallavala Mutta in Magadha. The Blessed One sat down on the prepared seat. Having sat down, the Blessed One said this to the Venerable Mahamoggallana. Are you nodding, Moggallana? Are you nodding, Moggallana? Right? Yes, Bhante. Right? Yes, Bhante. Now, when we see this question repeated twice, it also emphasizes a sense of connection between the Buddha and Mahamoggallana. You know, in other suttas, when it comes to the Buddha's associations or dealings with other sort of hermits, or, you know, we do not see this happening, right? Here, with regards to Venerable Mahamoggallana, or even Venerable Sariputta or other certain monks, you find that the Buddha has his relation. Also, it should be known point of information. Sometimes in the suttas, when the Buddha says Sariputta, right, when the Buddha uses Venerable Sariputta or Sariputta without Venerable just Sariputta, The commentaries explain that this refers to both Moggallana and Sariputta. Right, so when there is a group of monks, or if it is Moggallana and Sariputta, Venerable Moggallana and Sariputta, in front of the Buddha, asking a question, having a conversation, whatever it is, we find in many suttas, we find that the Buddha only is referring to Sariputta. Right, this is in one way the Buddha's way of respecting, or the Buddha's way of giving place to the more senior, right? And in another way, to sort of say that the Venerable Sariputta was after the Buddha, but the foremost disciple of the Buddha, right? So please note that in your mind. Sometimes when you see the Buddha relating to Venerable Sariputta, the Buddha is referring to both Moggallana and Sariputta, right? Yes, Bhante, right? In that case, Moggallana, when you perceive that drowsiness is descending upon you, you should make a mental note of that perception. Frequently make that perception, right? Frequently make that perception, right? Now, in making the perception, a person who is driven by the path. Now, remember, the Buddha, this is the advice to Venerable Moggallana. Venerable Moggallana, we understand, was one of the Buddha's foremost disciples, right? He was very close to the Buddha, and in that relationship, Venerable Moggallana was a person who had faith in the teaching, was for striving, and you find that whole plethora of dhammas required of a practitioner existent within a person such as Moggallana. This is to say, for example, if a person does not have the movement or the need to attain nibbana or the right dhamma to support one, just mentally noting is not going to do. This is specifically, we must understand who is this sutta referred to and what kind of person is he, right? What kind of person is he? The mental noting, right? Mental noting happens now when a person is within Dhamma, when a person really wants to flourish in the meditative practice, when the person wants to attain two attainments that is possible through this practice, the mental noting of saying, oh, drowsiness has arisen, gives one power over the aggregate of drowsiness which has arisen, right? But to the word which is used is a bala. Now, bala refers to a person who is not motivated in Dhamma or lives in the illusion of Nitya Sukha Atma, right? Impermanence, Sukha, happiness, and self, right? To a person who is a bala. In the English translation of the word bala is fool, but it is to say it refers to a weak-minded one. Then mental noting would not really do much. Because why? Just because you're noting it does not mean that anything else is going to arise. The mental noting is only going to allow the energy to arise to support your practice when you know something about the practice, when you are Is it a pancake? Samantha, what are you asking? Samantha, your question is unclear. We are doing the Pacalā Sutta.
Pacalā Sutta. Not Pan. Oh, so I've got Chinese on mine. Sorry, what's it? I'll get it on my computer. What's it called?
Pacalā Sutta. The link is in the website.
I didn't see it. Sorry. Sorry, Banti.
That's fine.
Oh, yeah, 17th. Yes, I've got it. Sorry, I've got it now.
Sorry. What pancake are you talking about? I would love pancakes, by the way. All right.
Sorry to disturb.
That's
I've
fine.
got it. Thank you, Bante. Yeah, thank you.
Right. So then it is to support a person who has that knowledge of Dhamma, who is willing to put forward, right? Who is willing to put forward that effort for the practice. Now, moving on, right? So the first one is mental noting. The second, what do we do, right? If Mogallana, that drowsiness still would not go away, meaning now these are to be practiced stage by stage, right? Stage by stage. Mogallana, that drowsiness still, if Mogallana, that drowsiness still would not go away, then Mogallana, you should think about, ponder over, mentally attend to a teaching that you have learned, that you have mastered, right? Now, when we sometimes, for example, even in our meditation practices, sometimes when we are feeling lazy, sometimes when it is difficult to awaken the necessary striving for us to keep on going, sometimes in the meditation practice, it is, we sometimes contemplate, this time of meditation is small compared to the time that we spend on other things. Because of that, we must give our fullest attention, or we must try hard to do the meditation well for the hour or so that we are doing. Now, that is also form of reflection, right? That is also form of reflection. Now, as we go on, as we have a better mastery over the Dhamma and the data that is available in the Dhamma, we are able to master or use the teachings to sort of awaken a sense of effort, virya, during our practice. Now, that is what the Buddha refers to as a reflection, right? That is what the Buddha refers to here as a reflection. Now, even in terms of being aware of the sensations of the mind, or any sort of satipatthana practice, when we do sort of go deeper into breaking apart the respective phenomena that we are meditating with, we do use certain reflections of Dhamma to go deeper into these reflections, right? But here specifically, we are talking about how we motivate ourselves to overcome a sense of drowsiness, right? So the second is reflection. This reflection is also supported by constant Dhamma learning, right? Constant Dhamma learning. Now, I have told you, if you can read a sutta, one sutra a day, good. If you can read 2 a day, it's amazing, it's great, right? And that allows this Dhamma reflection to also kick in, right? And it supports your practice in a way that you have this striving within you. The third one, it is possible that when you do so, that drowsiness will go away. Third one, if Mogallana, that drowsiness still would not go away, then Mogallana, you should recite in detail a teaching that you have learned. It is possible that when you do so, that drowsiness would go away, right? That drowsiness would go away. Now, in terms of recitation, right? Now, this could be a part of a sutta. We do a similar practice when we do sometimes some metta bhavana. Sometimes people do metta bhavana by the recitation of the metta sutta, right? There are parts of, for example, if we are doing certain parts of the Paticcasamuppada meditations. Then we have certain contemplations which are connected to dependent origination contemplations. When we meditate using certain parts of the books of Abhidhamma, we do recitations from Patthana, recitations from the Yamaka, the Dhammasangani. This is to, with the recitation, to go into the meaning of what is recited, right? To go into the meaning of what is recited. The meaning of the Dhamma then gives you a sense of energy, a sense of awakening, a sense of movement, some vega, in order to sort of prompt the energy required for you to go deeper into your meditation or practice, right? Meditation or practice. So that is recitation. Also, with regards to recitation, something that falls under recitation is also practices such as Buddhanussati, Silanussati, Chaganussati, Dhammanussati, right? These anusatis also fall under this, what we here refer to as recitation, right? It is a sense of now something. Now we find, of course, oh yes, of course, when we sometimes meditate, if it is a very hot day, actually hot days are quite good for meditation, to be very honest with you. Even if we look at, even if now, because most of us are from Sri Lanka, I'm sorry to any of you who are not, but because most of us then understand, if you look at the Sri Lankan map, right, and just point out or just look at the areas where we find ancient settlement of monks. Now we have places like Polonnaruwa, we have places like Anuradhapura, we have places like we have places like the Gaur, that area, Matara, Kurunagala. Then we have down south, we have, I'm sorry, Tissamarama, and those sites, right? Those sides, now you see what is the common thing in all of these places, right? Some places are forested, some places are more desert like, but they're all very hot places, right? They're all very hot places. Yala, all of these places are places where monks used to settle, and you don't find a ancient monk sort of habitat being around, let's say in the hill country, like for example Nurelia or Alla area, right? You don't find ancient stories of meditative monks being in these areas. Why? Because I have also personally found, when it is hot and you sweat, your body is healthy, and also you have a more, with the body being healthy, of course you must take care of yourself, you have to take care of yourself, stay hydrated and all of that, but you have it is a bit easier to meditate than being in a very cold climate, right? In cold climates, it's a daily fight with drowsiness, right? It's a daily fight with drowsiness, right? So I think even in many of the meditation centers that we have here in the UK, or in cold areas, in the higher altitudes of close to the Himalayas or Jammu Kashmir, all the centers there, you find, of course, there you find, okay, in England you find, of course, people are sort of covered up and all of these things, right, to sort of bring a sense of warmth. But when we go into the Hindu practices, I'm bringing in the Hindu practices because Hinduism, Brahmanism is also an ancient religion, right? Into Hindu practices, and also because they have a meditative teaching in that religion as well. In the Hindu practices, we find, of course, both hot and cold, right? We find the temples and the traditions of practice with regards to southern India and those parts. And we have the Jammu Kashmir, Rishikesh, Badrinath, Kedarnath, Himalayas, Kailash, those areas of practice as well, right? Now, in the Hindu practice, it's a little bit different, because Hindu practices based on samatha, right? Based on samatha, they reach states of, they slowly work up, right? The more your jhanic states or your absorptions are, the higher altitudes that you would challenge yourself with, right? One reason being, when you have this ability to sustain yourself, sustain the energy of the body through, of course, your meditative abilities, you do not need to eat much, right? So you do not have to sort of meet people every day, right? The samatha practices allows a person to do things such as that, whilst the vipassana practice is not like the samatha practice, where it is more towards a contemplation, reflection of realities. I think by now we all understand that, right? I do not need to further explain anything, right? So in that way we find that the monks, the Buddhist monks, would always locate themselves in areas that are warm, and you find this true in 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 many countries, right? Now, for example, even in India, you do not find monks being close to sort of Rishikesh, those areas. You don't find monks. You find sadhus, Hindu practitioners, but not Buddhist monks in those areas, right? You find most of them sort of in the lower altitudes. And even with regards to Burma, you find most of the meditation centers in hot areas, right? Not the Burma also has sort of a ice cap. The Himalayan range ends in Burma. Himalayan range ends in Burma, and we have the world's most dangerous mountain in Burma, K2. Not K2, I'm sorry, Kakaborazi, right? Kakaborazi is one of the most world's dangerous mountain. I think there are only about 2 or 3 people who have succeeded in climbing Kakaborazi. And Kakaborazi is one of the mountains of the Himalayan range, as the Himalayan range ends in Burma, right? And you don't find any settlements of monks or monasteries in that area. You find everyone in lower altitudes, right? Just some information. Moving on, right? If Moggallana, fifth point. Samantha, I hope you found the sutta. Fifth point. If Moggallana, that drowsiness still would not go away, then Moggallana, you should rub both your ears in a circular manner with your palms, right? And massage your limbs. It is possible that when you do so, that drowsiness would go away, right? That drowsiness would go away. Something that this is, maybe you have not seen this being done, right? But I have seen many monks actually do this, sometimes after a long meditation, or sometimes if it is if the weather is not so pleasant, or the weather is just not that weather that you would normally have, you do have sort of laziness, drowsiness arising, and then you do find monks sort of massaging and sort of massaging their legs and all of these things, doing it on their own, before going into meditation, right? And also something that we have all around. Now, I remember at Park, and that's actually many of the meditation centers that I've been to, many of the meditation centers in the meditation hall, usually we would have all of these different sort of massaging equipment, right? For example, like frames that you can sort of walk on, or things that you can lie back on. We have these things, right? So, and also I have also told you to sometimes massage yourself, isn't it, as we were meditating. And so these things, to get the blood moving, that has an impact on the drowsiness or what not that you experience, right? The another thing that sort of yes, all right. So moving on, look around. If Moggallana, that drowsiness still would not go away, then Moggallana, you should rise, wash your eyes with some water, look around yourself at the surrounding, and look up at the stars and constellations. It is possible that when you do so, that drowsiness would go away, right? Would go away. Actually, I mean, I'm reading this and I'm like, oh, we used to do most of these things. Right? Okay, so looking around. So this is to sort of awaken yourself, right? At this point, it is basically that it is difficult for you to arouse. It is difficult for you to arouse that energy that you require, right? At this point, when we have gone so low, and I'm sorry, not so low, when we have become so drowsy, right? Now, I remember when we were in the monasteries in Sri Lanka, most of these monasteries would have places that you could go and just chill, right? You could just go and chill. So we had sort of tops of mountains, tops of the rocks, and all of these things, and certain walks that, and you would go, and sometimes, after a long day, or after sort of a retreat or something, it would be a point that, monks, you find them, sort of meditating on top of rocks. They would just be, and this would go on till about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, right? And sometimes they even sleep on the rock, right? And get up in the morning and go. I mean, what a free life, right? What a free life, sleeping on a rock. Right? What a free life. It's beautiful, actually. And we would sometimes, I remember, we were all in a extensive retreat, and sometimes extensive retreats, they get a bit stressful as well, because sometimes it's the weather, and if your body is not really sort of agreeing, sometimes the weather is very dry, and because of that you have sort of problems with your bowel movements and all of these things, and you don't feel so good. I remember a bunch of us went on top of a rock, and we were sort of meditating together, and it refreshes you. That refreshing sort of feel, that refreshing mind is what we are looking for. But a sense of refreshment which comes from something which is positive, something which does not bring about the hindrances, right? Something that does not bring about the hindrances. As a Samanera, I remember when we would sort of feel bored with the retreat, which of course does happen. It is very normal for you to be bored with a bit of the retreat. So then you need a bit of fun. So what we do is we go out into the forest and sort of, break nuts and fruits off the trees, and we would sort of come and give it to the monks, because the monks can't sort of pluck and do all of that. So as a Samanera, you would sort of do that. So usually sort of when we sort of would go into the forest, which is a long walk away, of course, still within the monastery grounds, usually a head monk would ask, where are you going? Where are you going? It's retreat. And we're like, okay, we are going to do some, seva for the monks, to go get some fruit for the monks. So then we get excused, right? So it is also a bit of a cheeky excuse to get out. It's also a bit of a cheeky excuse to get out of the retreat and to go have some fun, right? And also, so look around. And then we have the perception of light, right? Now, the perception of light is something that we have discussed. Now, you find the perception of light in this stage, because the perception of light, if one is focusing greatly on a specific meditation, doing the perception of light may sort of tempt one away from the original practice of meditation, right? Original practice of meditation. Now, this would apply to a person who is in a serious mode of practice, right? So when you are in a serious mode of practice, sometimes you keep to a routine so that you develop certain parts of your mind or certain things that you do want to focus on, right? That is why we see the perception of light as a seventh factor. That if Moggallana, that drowsiness still would not go away, then Moggallana, you should practice the perception of light. Determine the perception of daylight. Just as day is, so is night. Just as night is, so is day. Thus, through the mind, through a mind that is open and unhindered, you should cultivate a mind of bright light. It is possible that when you do so, that drowsiness would go away, right? That drowsiness would go away. Now, this is to say, we take the element. Now, when we do the perception of light in this sense, we do not have to prepare a sense of kasina, right? We are not going to go so deep into the perception of light, right? We can take the light of the day and the light of the moon, the sun and the moon, right? In sort of perceiving light, in perceiving light. It also can be a visualization process in a way that you sort of absorb the energy of the sun and the moon as well, and you allow that to sort of bring you a sense of awakening that you will be able to then continue with your practice. Then we have the eighth stage or eighth thing that we could do. If Mogallana, the drowsiness still would not go away, then Mogallana, you should, perceiving before and after, be resolute in walking back and forth. Be resolute in walking back and forth with the senses turned inward, with the mind not straying outward. Now, perceiving back and forth, be resolute. Now, what does this mean? Now, when we do our walking meditation, right, we pick 2 points, starting point, ending point, right? The starting point and the ending point. You do not walk aimlessly, especially when you do something or you do a practice when you are trying to awaken a sense of awakening, right? When you are trying to awaken a sense of striving, right? You select, okay, I am going to walk from here to maybe 20 feet ahead or whatever you choose, whatever it is, right? This place that you choose, right? It is good if you choose a place, a point that could be within the reach of your eyes when you know the level that we slant the eyes down. It is sort of like this level where we are not looking too much forward, because then there are too much of elements in the environment, so that distracts us. What we do is with, for example, now I guess like a 45-degree angle, right? About a 45-degree angle, we focus, we bring our eyes down and we focus, and we sort of decide on an area around the vicinity of that angle, right? That is because to not be distracted by what is going around, right? Now, something that happens is, some of you might have experienced, when you focus on this, for some, everything else around disappears, right? The walking path, you see that the walking path is also starts moving, right? There is a sort of shift. Now, for that to arise, you must pick point A, point B, the starting point and the ending point, 45-degree angle, and then choose a point within that 45-degree vicinity, right? If you choose a point, let us say now I am looking at a 45-degree and I've chosen a point far ahead, that's not going to work, right? Because your mind is going to be distracted. It is like, for example, sometimes we recite the sutras, right? And the mind, because we are so used to reciting, for example, the Metta Sutta is something that we are so used to. And sometimes because we are so used to the sutta, sometimes the mind, there is more probability of the mind sort of wandering or sort of thinking something else while we habitually just chant, right? Now, it is to avoid that sort of a thing that we have all these points to enable the mind to sort of come back to a state of where it is now energized, right? Now, in the walking meditation, you do not have to do it slow, right? Now, in the walking meditation, sometimes you find that sometimes the monks, they walk quite fast, right? They walk quite fast, a little bit between walking and running sometimes, times, right? Not running exactly, but quite fast they walk. And this is sometimes usually after lunchtime, right? They do this. Why? To sort of arouse that energy, to sort of burn whatever food or whatever it is, and sort of arouse that energy. So it is, remember, your focus is not whatever it is that you're developing through the walking meditation in terms of doing it as a proper practice, but rather to awaken energy, to give you the refreshment that you require and need. And remember, sometimes when you are feeling drowsy, it is much more better to just get up and do some walking meditation, right? If you're feeling really drowsy, if you're not really feeling up to it, then it is better to do some walking meditation, right? If it is better to do walking meditation. But with regards to long walks, now I have instructed you, if you know, when you are going on your jogs and your walk, to do walking meditation as you go on your exercises, on your long walks in the afternoon, etc. Right? Now that is a type of meditation altogether, right? That walk is not similar to this walk, right? I think you understand that, right? Because the objective of this walking meditation is to arouse energy, right? Is to arouse that energy, right? If that too does not work, especially if something as active as walking meditation does not work, what do? Rest. If Mogdalana, that drowsiness still would not go away, then mindful and fully aware, you should lie down, lion-like on your right side, placing foot on foot, keeping in mind the time for rising, and on awaking Mogallana, you should rise quickly, thinking, I will dwell without indulging in the pleasure of sleep, or in the pleasure of reclining, or in the pleasure of drowsiness, right? Now, this is also comes to one who does not sort of indulge, or who is aware of the disadvantages or the dangers of indulging overly on the sensual pleasures, right? On the sensual pleasures. One who is motivated in what one should be doing. This comes to one as well. So then the Buddha says, then rest, right? Then rest. Now, when we go through these 8, it appears, it doesn't, the Buddha does not say it is wrong, or, oh my gosh, or, nothing of that way, to sort of emphasize that it is regarded as sometimes these things do happen. The tone that has been followed throughout the sutta is in a way of purely advice in the stages that one must try. But remember not to go directly into resting, right? That says a lot about your attitude and how much you are willing to put in towards a practice, right? Because at the end of the day, it is not for anyone else. It is the attitude that you set for yourself, for your future practices as well, right? For your future practices as well. Then, conditions conducive to concentration, humility. Therefore, Moggallana, you should train yourself. I shall not approach families for alms with my nose in the air. With my nose in the air. Right? Uchaha Sonda, right? Which is to say, pride and arrogantly. Right? With your nose in the air. Thus, Moggallana, you should train yourself. If Moggallana, a monk, approaches a family with his nose in the air, and Moggallana, there are families that are busy with various kinds of business. Who do you think? Who do not think about a monk who has come? Then such a monk might think, one who I wonder has cut me off from his from this family. Now, these people seem to be displeased with me, right? Displeased with me. Now, again, you see, it is about the practice, isn't it? Right? To sort of not allow, the Buddha sees the great potential and the way of the mind in a way that the mind leads to such sort of mentalities arising, such sort of mentalities arising, such sort of negative mentalities arising, right? Sometimes attitudinal change, to bring about attitudinal change, there must be certain physical changes as well, right? Sometimes, for example, if we are living in a household that is not conducive to peace of mind, right? Sometimes, and then you're trying very hard to bring about this peace, to push this peace, but it is not happening, right? Sometimes in those cases, if you so require that peace, certain hard decisions have to be made, in a similar way. The Buddha says, lower your gaze, right? Lower your gaze. Then, thus, through not receiving, he becomes discontented. Being discontented, he becomes restless. Being restless, he becomes unrestrained. Being unrestrained, his mind will be far from attaining concentration. It is not about the show. It is not about what other people think. It is not about that. It is about your hindrances and what you do to suppress or get rid of your own hindrances, right? Your own hindrances. Then, non-confrontational speech. Therefore, Moggallana, you should train yourself thus. I shall not speak in a confrontational manner. Thus, Moggallana, you should train yourself. When there is a confrontational talk, there would surely be wordiness. With wordiness, there is restlessness. With restlessness, there is lack of restraint. When there is lack of restraint, the mind is far from concentration, right? Far from concentration. In the way that we find, even with regards to the Buddha and the way that he questions, the bhikkhus, we find that there is a style of questioning that the Buddha employs to question, right? And this is regards to both, actually it regards to more the monks, and then he has a certain way of having a discussion with a person who is within the community, a lay person who is within the community, a devotee, and then he has a way of speaking to a person who does not have faith, right? Who does not have faith. This negates the level of trust as well, which allows a person to understand these things, or to understand the Dhamma, or to prompt a person towards, or to push a person, or to motivate a person towards Dhamma, right? Towards Dhamma. Suitable dwelling place. Moggallana. Neither do I praise all engagements, nor do I, Moggallana, blame worldly engagements either. Moggallana, I do not praise the association between householders and renunciates, but as regards association with dwelling with few sounds, little noise, cooled by breezes, secluded from humans, suitable for solitude, I praise. In a way, what he's saying is be careful, basically, right? In a way of saying, because there is understanding that these two communities cannot live completely secluded from one another, right? One thing is the devotees need the Dhamma, the bhikkhus need their food, basically, right? And in that way, a relationship has to exist, and there are certain suttas where this relationship is praised for the benefit of the laity. Remember, this is this is taught. This is taught now. So I've told you, with regards to certain very strict monasteries, we have to look down. We have to cover our eyes with our fans, right? This is to avoid external visual stimulation, right? External visual stimulation. Now, sometimes, now I remember a personal experience of mine. Now, we were not supposed to look up. The only person who can look up is the head monk, right? There were about 20 bhikkhus in this monastery. All of us were very closely observed, and the head monk was very, very strict, very, very direct, no hanky-panky business, right? Also, I would say that this was also one of the best monasteries that I have spent time in, because there is no reading between the lines, if you understand what I mean. You know, sometimes when you have the reading between the lines business going on, you are confused. You don't know what they mean. You don't know what exactly is expected out of you. Here, probably because of this was specifically in Yala, maybe you have heard of the Nimalava Forest Monastery, which is I think to date the most austere, one of the most austere. Actually, it is the most austere monastery in Sri Lanka, and the weather is quite hot, and because of the weather being hot, somehow everyone is very direct. You know, if you had done something wrong, it's to the face. There is no other thing, and there is no repetition also, right? That is something that I have found in very hot places, or very sort of that temperature. You know, somehow these monasteries that end up being in very hot climates, people tend to be very, very direct, right? I think for those of you who are from, Sri Lanka, we have heard of people who are from, the reactions of people who are from these hot areas as well, from Ambanagmuda, from that. That whole line, right? And even actually Anuradhapura, that Anuradhapura and all of that. We had a monk with us living in Burma. He was from Ambalangoda, and I used to tease him tease him all the time. So in that way, I have personally experienced that people are very direct, or monastics tend to be very, very direct in terms of where these locations of monasteries are. Whereas when these monasteries are more like rainforests, cooler climates, cooler areas, you find that there is a lot of underlying drama going on, right? Of course, I mean, drama in the way where you have to read in between the lines, and reading in between the lines is not actually a very good thing, because you tend to be confused, right? What is said is not what it actually means. And some people who have not lived in a monastery for years and years and years and years, will go through a disposition and feel a sense of discomfort when it comes to such sort of. So in this monastery, when I was living, the only time that we would meet the lay people was during the time of dana, which was once a day. And I remember when we would go in the line to sort of not serve ourselves, the devotees would serve. We are supposed to hold the bowl for the devotees. Sometimes, these men and women, they wear certain rings, or ornament, jewelry, or whatever it is on their hands or whatnot. And I specifically remembered, there was this lady who was wearing. It was a nice ring. It was a nice ring. It was not. I didn't notice that it was a nice ring. It was a ring, right? And I remember when I went back to my kuti, this ring was sort of, that hand, the ring was sort of, in my mind. I was like, what? So that to avoid that kind of stimuli, because when you are in a monastery as closed off as that is, right, even sort of external stimuli which sort of gets into your mind can sort of recur in your mind again and again and again, right? That is why, like suitable dwelling place, it is important to be restrained in your senses when you are in this sort of meditation retreat. Now, for example, for those of you who have partaken in something like a Goenka retreat, where we practice in silence for 10 days, the silence itself allows a person to go so deep down into your mind, right? So deep down into your mind. Another example that I could bring from my personal experiences, I remember when I first went into this monastery where we don't even actually talk much, right? It was, it was a lot of silent personal time where you meditate on your own. And you had to be really aware because there were so many sort of animals around. So you have to be really awake and aware. And also you couldn't sleep in the night because it was so hot. The heat absorbed by the rocks was sort of put out in the night, so you could only sleep around 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning when the rock starts cooling down. But that's also okay. It's okay because you sleep at 3, you get up at 6, and that's quite okay. It can happen because you're preserving a lot of energy with your meditation and all of that. And I remember, as we do not speak, or we do not sort of, we are very restrained in our senses, what the mind then starts doing, it starts going into your memories. It is like you are reading a book backwards, you day by day, month by month, in great grave detail, you are going backwards, right? It is a very weird sort of surreal experience as well. And you also question, my gosh, I didn't know that I remembered all of this, right? To such great detail that you would even recall the memories of the exact meals that you had on exact dates and exact months, right? The events with so much clear comprehension. The mind sort of starts at that point. You really understand the mind is really looking for some stimuli, right? To some stimulus, to something new, to something to think about. You go through that, and when you get through that period, that stage, your meditation becomes so pristinely pure. Your mind becomes so pristinely calm. It is always sort of, it's like it's empty, right? You're present, you're in the moment. It's a beautiful experience, an absolute beautiful experience, right? Moving on. So the first is, right, humility, non-confrontational speech, and suitable dwelling place are the conditions conducive to concentration. And now we look at the realization of insight. Nothing is worth clinging to, right? Nothing is worth clinging to. When this was said, the Venerable Mahamoggalana said this to the Blessed One. In what way, Bhante, in brief, is a monk freed through the destruction of craving? That is, one who has reached total perfection, the total security from bondage, the total holy life, the total consummation, the highest amongst humans, gods, and humans. Here, Moggallana, the monk has learned that nothing is worth clinging to. And Moggallana, a monk has learned that nothing is worth clinging to. There is not that learned that nothing is worth clinging to, and a monk has learned that nothing is worth clinging to. Thus, he directly knows all things. Directly knows the nature of all things. Having directly known the nature of all things, he fully understands all things. Having fully understood all things, he knows whatever feelings there are, whether pleasant, painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. As regards those feelings, he dwells contemplating impermanence in them. He dwells contemplating dispassion in them. He dwells contemplating ending in them. He dwells contemplating letting go. When he dwells contemplating impermanence in them, contemplating dispassion in them, contemplating ending in them, contemplating letting go, he does not cling to anything in the world. Not clinging, he is not agitated. Being not agitated, he himself surely attains nirvana. He understands birth is destroyed, the holy life has been lived, done what is to be done. There is no more for this state of being. That Moggallana is, in brief, how a monk is freed through the destruction of craving, that is one who has reached total perfection, this total security from bondage, the total holy life, the total consummation, the highest amongst humans and gods. Now, with regards to nothing is worth clinging to, even if, now of course we know anicca dukkha anatma, impermanent, suffering, and the non-self. But a point, a factor that derails us from the path of understanding or implementing the doctrine we know with regards to impermanent, suffering, and non-self is sometimes the quick judgment that we place on things, right? The quick judgment that we place on things. Meaning, when we experience a certain situation of the moment, of the present moment, it is important that we do not judge the moment, if you understand what I mean. For example, all of us, including myself, have gone through certain instances in our life when we see a person, when we meet a person, we say, oh, I don't like that person. Oh, that person is not a person that I agree with. In a way of placing judgment from that person, where now we completely shun that person, or we have a sort of a barrier wall between the communications that we have with that person, right? It derails us or puts us off from learning anything that that person has to offer. We look at a book, sometimes the title is somewhat confusing, right? We then make a judgment, oh, I don't like that book. That book is not something that I want to read. Completely closing off all the data and the information and the gems that we could have learned from the book. And I know that all of you do understand, when it comes to the moment, it is important not to judge the moment. Now, when I say judge, now the word judge is a very confusing word, I believe. Now, personally, it has been for me. Right? Why? Because now, as we learn about consciousness, we know that judgments are made each and every moment with regard to each and everything that we do. But when we use the word judge, or when we use the word judge, the way that the word judge is used here is to say that we do not draw final conclusions. Right? We do not draw final conclusions in a way that we have now decided the be all and the end all of that conversation or subject. We allow there to be a sense of open-mindedness, which would allow one to see, or to see deeper, or to be open to whatever which arises after. Right? And in that way, having an open sense of mind, now we might talk about this very openly about when it is something to do with something that we do not like a person or a book or a house or a car that we might be looking to buy. Right? We do this, we know this. What about things that we like? people who come into our life showing love, right? Sometimes, whilst we attach and make judgments for the worse, sometimes we make judgments for the in a pleasant way, within sort of quotes, in a pleasant way, right? Which then puts us off, or makes us, or puts us into a vulnerable situation, right? To a vulnerable situation. The Buddha, in that way, tells us not to do both, to not to be fast in making judgments, period, regardless of whether it is good or bad, right? Good or bad. Why? Because this weakens our ability to understand what the present moment is like. For example, as we meditate, when we would say, oh, the meditation was good, how do you know that the meditation was good? The meditation would have been good compared to the stressed out life that we all live in. But that is not a good meditation per se. That is just a comfortable meditation. But when that mind arises, there is some sort of attraction that keeps us grounded in that moment. That keeps us grounded in that moment, right? And we see this. And we see this in many circumstances with regards to different subjects where people grow too comfortable, right? We then do not put enough effort to take it higher, to take it deeper, to develop a better relationship. For example, children, husbands, wives, partners, all of these people, sometimes people have grown to sort of not put much effort into a marriage after they get married, and that is completely entirely wrong. Again, we have this judgment which comes in, right? I have it, it becomes like a trophy, right? I have it, or these are my children, I don't need to do anything, right? Now, of course, now with regards, I feel that this attitude exists in a lot, um, very widely all over the world. But in mindfulness, with regards to the practice, this clinging on takes topic in all of these topics, right? Or applies to all of these topics. One must be able to experience life, not judging the moment, but being awakened, aware of what is going on. Not judging the moment does not mean that you brainwash yourself to believe that a bad moment is good or a good moment is bad, right? Or a pleasurable moment is something which is not pleasurable or should not be pleasurable. It is to say you have no judgments, period. Like, for example, the lack of the internal dialogue. When you meditate, you experience. You experience. You are able to face it with or as it comes. That makes everything in terms of mind, in terms of realization, attachment, easier to deal with, right? If we have lost a person that we loved in our life, and we remember the way, if we have mourned and if we were so sad and depressed about it, if we just reminisce, take yourself back to the time that you were in mourning, and just contemplate, reflect on the defiance that you had to what had now happened, the judgment which was made regarding the instance, it made it difficult to deal with, right? That is what we are talking about. Even if it is not to the great extent of all the hindrances now not being there, it is there to a certain extent in the most basic levels as well, right? So that awareness in that way is something that we deal with or have to deal with, right? That is the sutta that we are doing today, or we've done. That is the end. And even if it, now with regards to not attaching, do not attach yourself even, or cling on to even the fact that you could not meditate, right? That is also important. It is important to realize and understand that we are basically human, that we work with weather, we work with all the different things that are going on. Be human, do not try to be a machine. Right? Allow that process to happen. Allow that process to happen. Now, do you have any questions that you would like to ask? You can unmute your mics if you do want to ask a question.
So Bante, what you were describing is that just about the perception, is that what Ditti Vipallasa is?
Well, I mean, Ditti Vipallasa, of course, we can explain Ditti Vipallasa with regards to this, but we are not talking about Ditti Vipallasa here, Ru. Yeah, of course, we can, it is a part of Ditti Vipallasa, we can connect it somehow, right? Because attachment, clinging, craving, we can attach to Ditti Vipallasana for sure, right? It is because of that Ditti Vipallasa that we actually do cling, right? But within the, if you are speaking with regards to the context of the sutta, we are not going into that. It is a very basic sutta. We are just saying, do not know in your mind that nothing is worth clinging on to, attaching on to, right? If you even think of something, now you could think of something, a difficult situation that you faced in the time of that you were in college or at school. Now being an adult, you understand, I mean, what kind of a petty thing that I cling to, all the disruption that we created and all the hullabaloo, right? So the sutta basically says note, because it is within this sutta we are just taught how to get rid of that drowsiness. We are not going into any sort of contemplation, because the contemplation is where we are trying to get back to, and that's the meditation vipassana. So in this, basically what the Buddha says is, know in your mind that nothing is worth clinging on to, right? That everything does pass for sure. Yeah?
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks.
Pushpa?
Yeah. Bante, I missed the fourth one.
You don't have the hand up, Pushpa?
No.
Recitation.
Recitation about teachings.
About the teaching.
Or
So,
Buddhanusati.
Buddhanusati, Dhammanusati, Chaganusati, Dhananusati, Dhammanusati.
So all that is third or fourth?
All of that comes into four.
Into the fourth one?
Recitation. Yeah, the fourth one. Recitation.
So the third one?
So the third one, okay. So when we say, okay, reflection and recitation, now the Buddhanusati, Dhammanusati, Sanghanusati, Chaganusati, Dhammanusati, all of that can belong in both the reflection and recitation, right? The recitation, it is done in a different manner. For example, in the reflection part, it is more inside. You're reflecting in your mind, right?
Yeah.
In the recitation, you're verbalizing it.
Yeah.
Right? So it can even be a sutta. It can even be the Metta Sutta, the Mangala Sutta, the Ratana Sutta, whatever other suttas it is, right? Yes, Pushpa?
Can I ask you to mention the first four, just the headings?
Pushpa, you will have to have the hand up, Pushpa. Huh? The first one is mental noting. The second is reflection. The third is recitation. Fourth is massage, right? Fifth is look around. Sixth is perception of light. Seventh is walking meditation, and 8 is rest.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Shriyani?
Bante, it's about the walking meditation.
Yeah.
When you do the walking meditation, there are times that you don't feel like walking. What is it? What's about that?
Okay. So you don't feel like walking, but you're drowsy?
No, I'm just moving. Just moving.
Uh-huh. When you do not, well, if you're not drowsy and
Yeah.
you don't want to walk, so then sit.
No. While you're doing the walking,
Uh-huh. Okay.
and you don't have any sensation on the feet, but you are automatic. It's like you're on the autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
So is that kind of a samadhi or?
Well, it depends on what your meditation subject is,
Mhm.
right? So what is the meditation subject?
Touching and going.
Yeah. So Kaya Anupassana.
Asana, yeah.
Yeah. So if it is Kaya Anupassana, then it is a position of you will have to feel the movement of the body. Now you will start feeling the movement of the body in a greater sense. First you start off just with the sensations of the feet, then it moves up to the movement of the muscles all around the feet and the legs, and then you find a sense of ability to know all the movement of the muscles from the feet to the legs to the thighs, right, and even into the core, right? That happens. So it is so basically when you are doing touch and so, then it is a part of void where you have voided out from the meditation subject, right? So then you bring it back into the walking or the movement of the walking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you understand?
Is it? Why is that you completely lose the sensation of your feet?
Well, it can happen for a different amount of reason. It does the sensation of the feet. So this is more of a Saturday Sunday question, right? But if the sensation of the feet, if the sensation of the feet are, if the sensations, to what degree have you lost it, right? Meaning if it is on autopilot, surely now that would not happen. It's basically the mind has gone into a different state where now you either the meditation has switched, the contemplation of the reflection has switched, your purpose has switched from the seeing of the movement to something else, right? Because in the primary practice of walking meditation, that does not happen. Hello.
Yeah, a little bit strange, but because I do experience quite often that sort of like completely blank, but
Okay.
I'm walking. Yeah, but I don't know what it is. Yeah.
Are you contemplating on the Anicca Dukkha Anatma?
That's something I have not done. No.
So then it's not Kaya Anupassana also.
That's what I don't understand what it is. I don't.
Okay. Well, shall we discuss this on Friday, Saturday,
Okay.
Sunday then?
Yeah.
Okay. Where we can go deeper into the meditation part.
Yeah. Okay.
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 Thank you.
All right. So then, who else? Pushpa asked a question. Dil, you want to ask a question? So Dil, until you unmute your mic, Devika, please go ahead.
Okay.
Bante, I just want to remind you at the end of the sermon to please confer merits to
Yes.
Yes. She's a non-Buddhist, but I have known her. She was a colleague of mine when I was in California where I worked. So she was only 39 years old, and then she got leukemia. And she had a hard time since last year, middle of last year. And then finally, she passed away. I felt so very sad yesterday, but after listening to the sermon today about letting go, I know that nothing is permanent. Someday we have to lose everyone. Death is inevitable. That's the truth. But I was deeply saddened yesterday because she has 3 kids and all that. And she was like a daughter to me. So, I mean, my mind healed a lot after our session today. I know deep down, I mean, it's inevitable.
Okay.
None of us can. It's what the Ayusha you bring to this world. When that ends, you have to go. So that's all. Just wanted to.
Let us transfer merits after the session. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Devika, for reminding. Yes, Dil, go ahead.
Okay. This last bit on the Sutta, I just want to clarify, because when we keep on chanting this in Amarati and when we tell that sometimes the English and the singers, so I just want to see the words exactly. So basically, if you say impermanence, it's anicca. Now, when you say dispassion, are you thinking of viraga, Bante? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So when it hear impermanence in this, this he was contemplating impermanence, that's anicca. When it was contemplating dispassion, are you thinking of viraga? Is that what dispassion is? Or are you thinking of fading away? Is that or disenchantment, which is nibbitanti? But when you said it, then ending is so. This is you say ending is cessation. So that's nirodha. And letting go of defilements, are you thinking of patinissagga? Is that what you're referring?
Dil, with regards to what are you asking the question?
The end of the sutta, if you look at last page on the top, right? It's the same thing when you do Anapanasati Sutta, when you do the Anantarakka Sutta, it all gives, at the end of it, having understood all these things, and whatever the feelings or whatever you have as regard those feelings, you keep on, you contemplate impermanence, dispassion, ending, letting go. So this is just constantly being mentioned. So here also they are underlined and
fading away of lust is viraga.
Yes.
Fading away of the lust, the fading away of the lust is viraga.
Is that nibbitanta, which is disenchantment, or is it patinissagga, which is letting go?
Well, I will have to.
The last one is contemplating letting go of defilements is normally.
You have to see the footnotes, Dil. You will find it in the footnotes.
Right. Okay,
because I would not be. I don't want to tell you something which is not.
Right.
Because
I'll check it up, Bante.
Yeah, please.
I know dispassion is definitely viraga. Ending of suffering, we know that nirodha.
Yeah.
And then it contemplate letting go of defilements. I think that is patinissagga. And nibbitanti is disenchantment. But I'll check it up. Thank you, Bante.
All right. Thank you, Dil. Yeah, Sujata.
I have nothing to ask you, sir. Thank you.
All right. All right. Is that all the questions that we have for today? If you do have any further questions, you can always unmute your mic. All right. So as we come to the end of today's session, let us share merits with Princess Howell, with all the merits that we have accrued through the learning of the Dhamma, through all the meditation that we have practiced, through all the Dhammadana that we have done throughout the past weeks, throughout our lives in this world. Let us share all those merits that we have committed, all those merits that we have accrued with Princess Howell, who has passed away at the age of 35 years, who has passed away because of leukemia. and also who was a mother of 3 children. With all the merits that we are accruing, may we share all these merits with Princess Howell, a friend of our friend Devika. And with the power of all of these merits, may she find peace wherever she is. May she be born in a place that would give her comfort of mind and body, enabling her to understand the reality of life, working towards a higher, grander scheme of life, enabling her to attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. With all the merits that we have accrued, let us also share all of these merits with all of our departed relatives and guardian deities, wherever they might be. If they are in need of merit, may they all share in all the merits that we accrue on a daily basis, with all the wholesome kusala heart that we perform all of these good deeds with. May we share all of these merits, all of this energy with these beings, and with the power of these merits, may all of these beings be able to attain higher states of life. Through the higher states of life, may they attain the bliss of Nibbana. Thus, let us chant Idam me Jnati Nam. Idam me Jnati Nang Hotu Sukhita Hontu Jnatayo. Idam me Jnati Nang Hotu Sukhita Hontu Jnatayo. Idam me Jnati Nang Hotu Sukhita Hontu Jnatayo. Akasattha ca bummattha devanaga mahindika punyantang anumodetva chiran rakhantu sasanam. Akasattha ca bummattha devanaga mahindika punyantang anumodetva chiran rakhantu desanam. Akasattha ca bummattha devanaga mahindika punyantang anumodetva chiran rakhantu mam paranti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All the best. I will see you all tomorrow. And to those of you who were not there for our small meeting yesterday night after the session, from next week onwards, we will be having a sutra session only on Monday, every Monday, and the Abhidhamma session on every Wednesday. And the meditation session will go on as it has Saturday and Sunday. Thank you very much. Take care and good night.